The warehouse is different at night. It breathes. It hums. It watches. I never liked working the night shift, but it paid well enough to keep me coming back. The silence was the worst part. During the day, the place was alive with the sounds of forklifts, workers shouting over each other, and the constant beeping of scanners. But at night, it was just me, the distant buzzing of the overhead lights, and the occasional creak of metal shelves settling into place. I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot, the tall, windowless building standing like a giant, black box against the night sky. A single dim light flickered above the employee entrance, casting long, jagged shadows across the pavement. As I stepped out of my car, a cold wind snaked through my jacket, making me shiver. Another long night, I muttered to myself, rubbing my hands together before heading inside. The air inside the warehouse was stale, thick with the scent of cardboard and dust. My boots echoed against the concrete floor as I walked past rows of towering shelves stacked high with crates and pallets. The place always felt too big, like it could swallow a person whole. Maybe that's why I always felt like I wasn't alone, even when I knew I was. I swiped my ID badge at the security checkpoint, the scanner beeping in response. The old security guard, Reggie, barely glanced up from his crossword puzzle. He was an old-timer, grizzled and grumpy, counting down the days to retirement. "Mike," he grunted in greeting. "Reggie," I nodded. "Quiet night. Ain't no such thing in this place," he muttered without looking up. I frowned. Reggie always said weird stuff like that. I figured it was just his way of messing with me. Pushing past the checkpoint, I headed toward the main floor. That's when I noticed something odd. Jordan's locker was still open. His jacket was still hanging inside, his half-empty water bottle on the bench. But Jordan was nowhere to be seen. Strange. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 11:45 p.m. He was supposed to be on shift with me, but there was no sign of him. I glanced around, expecting to see him joking around near the loading docks or taking a break in the back. Nothing. Just rows of shelves stretching into the darkness, the far corners of the warehouse swallowed in shadows. A faint noise made me stop. A rustling. I turned my head sharply toward aisle 9, where the sound had come from. My heartbeat picked up. Maybe it was just the ventilation system kicking in. Or maybe Jordan was messing with me. "Jordan," I called out. My voice echoed, thin and hollow against the steel racks. No answer. I exhaled slowly, shaking off the unease creeping up my spine. I was letting my imagination get to me. The warehouse was just a building, nothing more. A big, empty, lifeless building. At least, that's what I told myself. I pushed my unease aside and got to work. I scanned the clipboard Ronald had left on my station. Inventory checks, load tracking, the usual. Ronald was the night supervisor, a man of few words and even fewer emotions. He ran the shift with a firm hand, never smiling, never joking, just orders and silence. He appeared from the far end of the warehouse, walking toward me with his usual stiff posture. His face, illuminated by the pale glow of the overhead lights, was unreadable as always. "Where's Jordan?" I asked, hoping for an answer. Ronald didn't blink. Called out. That didn't make sense. If Jordan had called out, why was his jacket still here? Why was his locker still open like he'd just stepped away for a second? I frowned, but Ronald didn't seem interested in discussing it. Instead, he handed me a clipboard. "Stick to your section, and stay out of the restricted storage." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "Right," I mumbled, watching him disappear into the back offices. I stood there for a moment, listening. The warehouse groaned, the metal shelves settling as if shifting in their sleep. I was being paranoid. Just another night. Just another shift. And yet, something felt wrong. The warehouse felt bigger at night. During the day, the constant movement of forklifts, the chatter of workers, and the hum of machines made the space feel alive. But at night, everything was different. The silence stretched wide, filling the aisles like a thick fog. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering every now and then, casting long, uneasy shadows against the tall shelves stacked with forgotten inventory. I pulled my hoodie tighter around me and checked my watch. 2:47 a.m. Jordan still hadn't shown up. I had worked with him for months, and he had never missed a shift without a call. His locker was still in the break room, and his half-empty bottle of Gatorade sat on the table, untouched. It was like he had been here, and then just disappeared. I grabbed the barcode scanner and walked toward the next aisle. The wheels of my cart squeaked against the polished concrete floor, the sound bouncing off the metal shelves. I told myself I was just overthinking things. People called off work all the time. Maybe Jordan got sick. Maybe he overslept. But then why did I feel like someone was watching me? I stopped for a second, listening. Nothing. The air was still, heavy, as if the warehouse itself was holding its breath. I exhaled, shook my head, and went back to scanning boxes. Beep. I moved to the next one. Beep. I kept working, trying to ignore the creeping unease. But then, just as I was about to scan another box, I heard it. A whisper. A faint, distant whisper that came from the other end of the aisle. It was so soft, almost like the rustling of paper, but I knew what I heard. It sounded like my name. Mike. I spun around. No one was there. I swallowed hard and laughed under my breath. Come on, man. You're just tired. I forced myself to keep moving, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every time I turned a corner, I had the strange sensation that someone had just stepped out of sight. I reached the end of the aisle and turned, pushing my cart toward the main walkway. That's when I saw it. A shadow. It was quick, too quick. A dark blur that moved at the very edge of my vision. I stopped dead in my tracks. The warehouse was supposed to be empty. The only other person here was Ronald, and he was in his office, nowhere near this part of the building. I stepped forward cautiously, peering around the corner. Nothing. Just rows of shelves stretching into the distance. But the air felt wrong, like someone had just been there. I took a slow breath and tightened my grip on the barcode scanner. My heart pounded in my chest. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. Maybe the long shifts were finally getting to me. Then, a loud crash echoed from the next aisle over. I jumped, my pulse spiking. Something had fallen. I hurried around the corner and found a box lying in the middle of the floor. Its contents, loose papers and plastic packaging, were scattered everywhere. I looked up at the shelf. The box had been sitting on the third row, at least 7 feet off the ground. Even if it had been placed incorrectly, it shouldn't have just fallen like that. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Someone, or something, had knocked it over. I turned my head slightly, straining to hear past the buzzing lights and my own uneven breathing. That's when I heard it again. A whisper. But this time, it was closer. The warehouse was quieter than usual. The sound of my own footsteps echoed against the tall metal shelves as I made my way toward the restricted section. My shift was only halfway through, but something had been gnawing at me ever since I clocked in. The missing worker. The shifting shadows. The strange way my coworkers avoided talking about it. I needed to see for myself. Ronald had warned me not to go near the back of the warehouse, but he never gave me a reason. And when someone tells you not to look at something without explaining why, it only makes you want to look even more. The restricted area was tucked away at the farthest corner of the warehouse, where the overhead lights barely reached. The air here was colder, stale, like it hadn't been touched in years. Rows of old crates and forgotten equipment lined the walls, their labels peeling and covered in dust. I ran a finger across one and frowned. The dust was thick, undisturbed. No one had moved anything back here in a long time. Then why did I feel like I wasn't alone? A faint scratching sound drifted through the silence. My breath hitched. It was soft at first, barely noticeable over the hum of the distant machines, but it was there, slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere nearby. I swallowed and took another step forward, pushing deeper into the shadows. My heart pounded harder with every step. The air was thick now, pressing against my skin like an invisible weight. Something about this place felt wrong. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a stack of crates piled too neatly in the corner. But as I stepped closer, I realized they weren't stacked at all. They were covering something, hiding it. I crouched down and reached out, hesitating for just a second before gripping the edge of the top crate. It was heavier than I expected, but I managed to push it aside, sending a cloud of dust into the air. And that's when I saw the trapdoor. It was old, older than the warehouse itself, from the looks of it. The wood was cracked and discolored, with deep scratch marks running along the edges. Someone, or something, had tried to claw its way out. I took a shaky breath and placed my hand on the cold metal handle. A sharp chill ran up my arm, like the door itself was warning me not to open it. And then the scratching started again. But this time, it wasn't distant. It was coming from the other side of the trapdoor. I yanked my hand back, stumbling as a sudden rush of panic shot through me. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, as if something had sensed my presence. I wasn't alone down here. I turned and bolted, knocking over a stack of crates as I ran. The noise echoed through the warehouse, but I didn't care. I needed to get away. I needed to pretend I never saw it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. Because whatever was down there, it knew I was here. I shouldn't be here. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around, to leave the restricted storage section and pretend I never saw the trapdoor. But I couldn't. My fingers hovered just above the cold metal handle, and the deeper I stared into the darkness around me, the more I felt something staring back. Then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps echoing against the concrete floor. My heart slammed against my ribs as I spun around. Ronald stood at the entrance of the aisle, his shadow stretching long under the flickering overhead lights. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, they held something I hadn't seen before. Not anger. Not annoyance. Fear. You shouldn't be here, Mike. His voice was low, almost a whisper. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. What is this place? Ronald took a slow step forward. I took one back. The distance between us wasn't much, but it felt like an invisible wall was keeping him from getting any closer, like he didn't want to step too far into the dark. You don't want to know. His tone was firm, final, like that was supposed to be the end of the conversation. But it wasn't. Where's Jordan? I demanded. My own voice surprised me. It sounded braver than I felt. Ronald's jaw tightened. Go home, Mike. I shook my head. Not until you tell me what's going on. He exhaled sharply, running a hand down his face. For the first time since I started working here, he looked tired, as if carrying something heavy that no one else could see. Listen to me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper now. You're new. You still have a chance to leave this place and never come back. Take it. A cold chill ran down my spine. Why? What's down there? Ronald's eyes darted toward the trapdoor for just a second before snapping back to mine. He lowered his voice even more. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. This wasn't just some storage room. This wasn't just some warehouse secret I wasn't supposed to know. This was something else. Something worse. I turned back toward the trapdoor. It sat there, silent, waiting. The air around it felt different now, like it was holding its breath. Then came the sound. A scratch. Slow, deliberate, coming from the other side of the door. I froze. My skin crawled. Ronald was already backing away. Forget what you heard. Forget what you saw. I looked at him, my pulse thudding in my ears. And if I don't? Ronald met my gaze, his expression dark, serious. Then it won't forget you. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me alone with the scratching. I stood in the dimly lit hallway outside Ronald's office, my heart pounding against my ribs. The warehouse was silent now, unnervingly so. The usual hum of machinery and distant clatter of moving crates had vanished, leaving behind a stillness that felt unnatural. I reached for the doorknob and hesitated. What was I even looking for? Proof that something was wrong. I already knew that, but I needed more. I needed to understand what was happening in this place, what Ronald was hiding. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The office smelled like stale coffee and something else, something faint but unpleasant, like old metal or rusted pipes. Papers were scattered across the desk, some yellowed with age. A small desk lamp flickered as I stepped inside, casting strange shadows along the walls. I started searching through the clutter. Most of it was mundane, shift schedules, inventory reports, shipping logs. But then I noticed a logbook, its black leather cover worn and cracked. It was shoved beneath a stack of old invoices, as if someone had tried to hide it in plain sight. I pulled it out and flipped it open. The handwriting was neat, almost too precise. My eyes scanned the first few pages, just dates and names, normal employee records. But as I flipped further, the entries began to change. Some names had thick black lines through them. The further I read, the more frequent the crossed-out names became. Jordan's name was here. His last clock in was recorded, but there was no sign-out time. No explanation. I turned another page. More names. More missing people. Some I didn't recognize, but others I had worked with, had spoken to, had laughed with in the break room. And then I saw the worst part. Besides some of the crossed-out names, a word had been written in shaky handwriting. Taken. My hands went cold. I didn't understand what I was looking at. Taken? Taken where? By who? By what? A sudden noise outside made me snap the book shut. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. Someone was coming. I slid the logbook into my jacket and held my breath as the footsteps stopped just outside the office. The shadow under the door stretched long and unmoving. Then, Ronald's voice. Low. Calm. You shouldn't be in there, Mike. I turned, heart hammering in my chest. He was waiting, and he didn't sound surprised. The silence was the first thing that felt wrong. A warehouse is never truly quiet. There's always a faint hum from the overhead lights, the distant whir of machinery, or the occasional scurry of rats in the forgotten corners. But now nothing. It was as if the entire building had been swallowed by something bigger than the night itself. I stood frozen between the endless rows of towering shelves, gripping my flashlight tighter. The air felt heavier, thick like a dense fog pressing against my skin. Then, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Darkness. The glow from my flashlight cut through the black, but it felt weaker, swallowed by the shadows stretching around me. My breath hitched as I turned, sweeping the light across the endless aisles. Empty. But I knew better. Then it came, the sound. A whisper. It wasn't loud, but it was close. Too close. It came from behind me, soft, almost gentle, as if someone was leaning right up to my ear. Mike! My blood turned to ice. I spun around, my flashlight shaking in my grip. There was no one there. The shelves loomed above me, casting long, jagged shadows that moved like living things. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe exhaustion was finally messing with my head. Then something moved. Far at the end of the aisle, where the light barely reached, I saw it. A figure, standing in the shadows. It wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. Who's there? My voice came out hoarse. No answer. I took a step forward, my light struggling to pierce the darkness. The figure didn't move, didn't react. But as I got closer, I realized something was wrong. The proportions were off. The arms were too long, the head tilted at an unnatural angle. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The lights flickered again, and for a fraction of a second, everything was bathed in a harsh, buzzing glow. The figure was gone. My stomach twisted. It hadn't moved. It had just vanished. I stumbled back, my flashlight whipping from side to side. My breathing was coming too fast now, my chest tightening with a fear I couldn't rationalize. Then, from somewhere in the dark, a sound. A dragging noise. Slow. Wet. Like something heavy being pulled across the floor. I turned and ran. I didn't care where I was going. My boots pounded against the concrete as I raced past the rows of shelves, my flashlight bouncing wildly. The dragging sound followed, growing louder, closer. Then the lights flickered again. And in that split second of brightness, I saw it. Something crawled just beyond the reach of my flashlight. It was fast, moving in jerky, unnatural motions, its limbs bending in ways that should have been impossible. Then darkness swallowed everything again. I couldn't stop. I wouldn't. My mind screamed at me to get out, to escape. But the warehouse doors were too far, and I knew, deep down, I wouldn't make it in time. Then, ahead of me, in the dim glow of my flashlight, someone was standing there. Ronald. His expression was unreadable. Calm. Unshaken. Like he had seen all of this before. It won't let you leave, he said. And behind me, the whisper came again, right at my ear. Mike. I didn't hear the creature at first. The silence was so deep, it felt like the air itself had been sucked out of the warehouse, leaving only a suffocating stillness behind. But then I felt it, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end, a sharp, crawling sensation that made my skin prickle. I turned slowly, every step measured, trying not to make a sound. The flickering lights above me made it hard to focus, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to move on their own. My heart was pounding in my chest, so loud in my ears I could barely hear anything else. Then I saw it. It was just a blur at first, something huge, too fast to register clearly, darting across the aisle at the edge of my vision. My breath caught in my throat, and I froze. I thought I had imagined it. But then there it was again, this time right in front of me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a stack of crates. My eyes went wide, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from what was moving in the dark. It wasn't a person, not even close. The shape was all wrong. Too long, too distorted. Its outline shifted like it was made of shadows, blending with the dark corners of the warehouse. There was a low, rasping sound coming from it, like something scraping against metal, and it was getting closer. I took a step back, then another, my eyes darting around for a way out. The exit doors were too far away, too far to reach before it reached me. And then, in the distance, I saw something else. Ronald. He was standing there in the middle of the aisle, facing me, his hands hanging at his sides. I couldn't make out his expression, but his posture told me everything. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't even moving. "Ronald," I yelled, my voice cracking in the silence. "What the hell is that?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, watching. I couldn't tell if he was waiting for me to run, or if he was too scared to do anything himself. Either way, I had no choice but to move. I turned and sprinted toward the back of the warehouse, the distant sound of the creature's claws scraping against the concrete floor getting louder with each step. My legs were screaming at me, but I kept pushing myself faster, harder. The shadows seemed to stretch toward me, twisting, reaching out like hands. Every breath I took felt shallow, like there wasn't enough air in the room. I glanced back, and for a split second, I saw it. A face, pale and twisted, just behind one of the shelves. Its eyes were wide, unblinking, and its mouth was open in a grotesque, silent scream. I stumbled again, barely catching myself before crashing into a pile of crates. I had no idea where I was going. I didn't know where I could go. The whole place felt like a maze, the aisles and shelves twisting together, trapping me. The thing was too fast, too close. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I turned a corner, my eyes desperately searching for an exit. That's when I saw Ronald again, standing at the end of the aisle, still as stone. This time, he raised his hand, slowly, deliberately. He was pointing toward the trapdoor, the one I'd seen earlier, the one that led underground. For a moment, I considered running toward him, but something in his eyes stopped me. I knew it. He wasn't trying to help me. He wanted me to go down there. He wanted me to be part of whatever this thing was. I didn't have a choice. The creature was right behind me now, its breathing low and ragged, like it was savoring the chase. I looked at the trapdoor again, feeling the cold air rising from below. I swallowed hard and turned toward the shadows. The creature was already there, almost on top of me. "Mike!" The whisper came again. Only this time, it wasn't in the shadows. It was right in my ear, like the creature was inside my head. I could feel its presence, like a cold wind brushing against my skin. It was trying to get inside me, to crawl into my thoughts, my mind. I couldn't fight it. My legs were moving before I even realized it, sprinting straight toward the trapdoor. The creature snarled, the sound sharp and ragged, but I didn't stop. The air grew colder as I got closer. I threw myself at the trapdoor, my hands scrabbling for the latch. I couldn't get open fast enough. It was right behind me, the sound of its claws scraping the floor deafening. With a final, desperate push, I wrenched the trapdoor open, falling into the darkness below. I had no choice. The doors were locked, the lights were flickering like a heartbeat, and the thing was out there, just waiting for me to turn a corner or look away for 1 second. I could feel it getting closer, its presence heavy and suffocating. It wasn't just the darkness that terrified me now, but the fact that something was in it, something that wasn't human. I didn't think, I just moved. The trapdoor. That damn trapdoor beneath the stacks of crates. It was the only way out. I didn't even hesitate. The warehouse had become a maze of terror, each shadow more sinister than the last, each step echoing through the silence like a warning. My heart was pounding in my ears as I sprinted toward the back of the warehouse. The air grew colder the closer I got to the trapdoor, like a cold hand brushing against my skin, pulling me down into the depths. The scratchy feeling in the back of my neck wasn't just the chill, though. It was a presence, a knowing that something was watching me, listening. I reached the trapdoor and shoved the crates aside, trying not to look over my shoulder. My fingers fumbled as I gripped the rusted handle, pulling it up with all the strength I had. It creaked, a low, guttural sound, and I swear I could hear something shift below. I hesitated for just a moment, my breath caught in my throat, before I dropped down into the darkness. The smell hit me first, a damp, earthy odor that filled my lungs and made my stomach twist. The air down here was different, heavier. It felt alive. I looked up, and the weak light from the warehouse barely filtered through the trapdoor, casting long, thin shadows that seemed to crawl across the walls. The space was vast, too vast for a basement or a crawl space. This wasn't just beneath the warehouse. It felt like it was miles below it. I took a deep breath and lowered myself further into the hole, the rungs of a metal ladder cold under my hands. Every step I took, every inch I descended, the feeling of something watching me grew stronger. I felt like a bug about to be swallowed whole by some unseen predator. The only sound was my breathing, shallow and rapid, mixing with the distant hum of the warehouse above. When my feet finally touched the ground, I froze. The air down here was thick, sticky, and the silence was almost deafening. The walls seemed to pulse, as if they were breathing in sync with me. I scanned the space, but all I could see were shadows. Shadows that stretched and twisted, shapes that didn't quite make sense. I took a step forward, my shoes sinking into the cold, damp earth beneath me. It was like walking on something soft like mud, but it wasn't mud. It felt wrong. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I had to see this through. The farther I walked, the more I felt the ground shift beneath me, as if something was stirring just below the surface. I could hear the faintest scraping, like claws on stone. My stomach churned. The faintest whisper danced in my ear, too quiet to make out the words, but it felt like it was speaking directly to me, urging me forward. I stumbled, tripping over something that didn't belong on the ground. What I thought was a pile of rags turned out to be pieces. Human pieces. Clothes. Ripped. Torn. Blood-stained. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry, and stepped back, my eyes not want to focus on the horrifying reality in front of me. I forced myself to keep walking, deeper into the cavernous room. The walls were smooth and unnaturally cold to the touch, and there were markings on them, something I couldn't quite make out in the low light. I could feel something watching me now, closer than before, a presence that was more than just a feeling. It was as if the very walls were alive, pressing in on me from all sides. I couldn't turn back. I had to keep moving. As I rounded a corner, I stumbled into what could only be described as a nightmare. There, lying in the center of the room, was what looked like a massive cocoon. It was wriggling, twisting, as though something was inside, struggling to get out. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped closer, too terrified to look away. The cocoon was alive, pulsating with a slow, rhythmic thump. Then it hit me. This wasn't just some creature. This thing had been feeding off the workers, one by one. It had been waiting for me. The moment I realized that, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The shadows around me seemed to stretch out, and the ground beneath my feet felt like it was pulling me in. I could hear scratching now, claws against the stone, and I just knew, that whatever was in that cocoon was going to break free any second. I had to escape. There was no time left. I don't know how long I was running, but by the time I reached the trapdoor, my lungs were burning, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. Every step echoed through the empty aisles. Every corner felt like it might hide something waiting to grab me. My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept going, the sound of my breathing loud in my ears. The warehouse felt alive, breathing with me, as if it was a living thing. I gripped the rusted handle of the trapdoor, yanking it open with a screech that felt like it echoed through my skull. A cold gust of air hit me, making my skin crawl. The darkness below seemed to pull at me, pulling me deeper into its grip. I glanced behind me, half expecting Ronald to show up, but the aisle was empty. I stepped down into the narrow, steep staircase, each step creaking under my weight. My eyes slowly adjusted to the pitch black. I couldn't see a thing, but I could feel it, the air thick and heavy, like it was pressing against my chest, suffocating me. The deeper I went, the colder it got. My breath fogged up in front of me. Then I heard it. A low, dragging sound, something scraping across the floor. At first, I thought it was just the old wooden stairs settling, but no. It was something else, something much worse. The sound grew louder, closer, dragging itself along the ground as if it was waiting for me. I froze. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to climb up and forget this whole mess. But something inside me, some twisted curiosity, or maybe just the need to understand, kept me going. I needed to know what was down here, what I had stumbled into, what I'd been hearing all these nights. The darkness was suffocating now, but it wasn't the kind of darkness that made you feel safe. No, this was different. This darkness pressed on me, like it had weight, like it wanted to crush me. I couldn't even hear my own footsteps anymore, just a dragging sound, now unmistakable. It was moving closer. Then I saw it. A flicker of movement, just ahead, a shape in the dark. Not a person. No, it wasn't human. My stomach dropped, and I had to fight the urge to scream. It was a thing, something that didn't belong here, something that shouldn't exist. It was huge, almost serpentine, its body undulating and twisting as it crawled across the floor. I couldn't make out the details, but I could see the movement, the way it slithered, dragging itself with the force of something old and powerful. The walls around it seemed to pulse, like they were alive, breathing with it. And then, as if sensing me, it stopped. I didn't dare move. My body locked up, frozen in place. I could feel it staring at me, although I couldn't see its eyes, couldn't see its face. There was just this overwhelming presence, like it was filling every inch of the room, its weight pressing down on me from all directions. And then I heard a voice. It was quiet, a whisper, like it was inside my head. It wasn't human, not by any stretch of the imagination. It was guttural, rasping, like it hadn't spoken in a long, long time. But it was clear. You shouldn't have come down here. The voice echoed around me, vibrating in the air, and I could feel it in my bones, in the very marrow of my being. My skin prickled, and I could taste the metallic tang of fear in the back of my throat. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs refused to move. I was stuck, trapped in this nightmare. And then it moved again, this time faster. The thing lunged toward me with a speed that didn't match its size, its jagged, misshapen body contorting in ways that shouldn't be possible. The air around it grew colder, like a vacuum pulling everything toward it. I didn't think. I just reacted. I turned and ran, scrambling up the stairs, my hands slipping on the slick, damp wood. Behind me, the dragging sound grew louder, closer. The thing was coming after me. I reached the trapdoor and slammed it open, bursting out into the dim light of the warehouse. I didn't stop to look back. I didn't dare, but I could feel it. It was there, watching me, waiting for me to slip up. It was below me, inside the walls of this place, and it wasn't going to let me leave. Not if it could help it. And then, just as I thought I might make it out, the voice came again. You're not leaving. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart leaping into my throat. Ronald was standing at the bottom of the stairs. His face was as cold and lifeless as I remembered. But his eyes were different now. They were cold, empty, like he wasn't even human anymore. He knew what was down here. He had known all along. I wanted to ask him why, but my voice failed me. It didn't matter anyway. He wasn't going to answer. Not now, because I realized something. Ronald wasn't the one in charge. The thing below was. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, each beat like a drum, signaling the inevitable. Ronald had stepped into the dark, cold pit beneath the warehouse, his face barely illuminated by the flickering light from my flashlight. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, like they were alive, watching us. I had one chance to end this nightmare before it swallowed me whole. Ronald's eyes, eerily calm, followed my every move. There was no panic, no fear, just a hollow resignation. He stepped toward me slowly, like a predator circling its prey, ready to strike. I told you to leave it alone, he muttered, his voice distant, almost emotionless. It's not about you. It never was. I tried to steady my breath, my mind racing, searching for something, anything, to defend myself. I glanced around the dark chamber, my eyes landing on the shelves stacked with old crates and bottles of industrial alcohol. There it was, the only thing that could give me a fighting chance. I grabbed one of the glass bottles, its weight solid in my hand. It wasn't much, but it was something. I had to act fast. Ronald was only a few steps away now, his fingers twitching at his sides, ready to grab me. I swung the bottle hard, smashing it against the stone floor. The glass shattered with a sharp crack, sending a spray of liquid across the cold, grimy concrete. Ronald flinched, but not from fear. He seemed to sense something deeper. You think fire will stop it? he sneered, shaking his head. You have no idea what you're up against. I didn't care about his words anymore. The creature was close. I could hear it, its low, guttural breathing echoing from the shadows. Something primal inside me snapped. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about ending this. I grabbed another bottle, my hands trembling but determined. I didn't even think, I just acted. I hurled it toward the far wall, where the industrial alcohol spilled across the floor, seeping into every crack. The liquid pooled around my feet, thick and slick. Ronald took another step forward, his eyes narrowing. You can't stop it. You can't escape. I wasn't listening to him anymore. I didn't need to. I moved toward the crates stacked against the wall, fumbling for anything to light the fire. My hands found a matchbook, a small sliver of hope. I struck a match, the tiny flame flickering for a moment before it caught. I held it up, feeling the heat grow in my palm. Without thinking twice, I dropped it onto the soaked floor. The fire ignited instantly, roaring to life like a living thing, licking the walls, twisting through the dark, spreading faster than I could have imagined. Ronald didn't move. He stood frozen, staring at the fire as it devoured everything in its path. The creature's growls grew louder, more frantic, as if it was trapped, desperate to escape. I didn't wait. The heat was unbearable now, the air thick with smoke. I ran toward the exit, my feet slipping in the alcohol-drenched floor. I could feel the flames crawling closer, licking at my heels. But I wasn't going to stop. I couldn't. The warehouse trembled, the ground shaking beneath me. The walls creaked, the flames reaching higher, faster. I thought I could hear the thing, the creature, screaming, but it was swallowed up by the roar of the fire. And then, just like that, the ground gave way beneath me. I stumbled, my hands flailing for anything to grab. The floor collapsed in a deafening crash, and I fell. The world spun as I tumbled into darkness, the fire's heat still burning through the air, its fury erupting above me. I landed hard on the ground, my body jolting with pain. I gasped for air, coughing through the thick smoke that filled the space. I could hear the fire, the crackling, the roar, as it consumed everything in its path. But as I lay there, staring up at the remnants of the warehouse above me, something inside me knew it was over. The fire had done its job. It had destroyed the monster beneath the surface. Ronald wasn't going to stop it anymore. I pushed myself to my feet, my head spinning, my legs weak. The smoke made my eyes burn, but I had to keep moving. I had to get out before the flames reached me. I stumbled toward the exit, my mind foggy but focused. The sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. I reached the door, the fire behind me, now a living hell, a final testament to everything that had happened. I stepped outside into the fog, the cool air a relief against the searing heat that still clung to me. The night had swallowed the warehouse whole. It was gone, but something lingered. A whisper, soft and familiar, brushed against my ear. My name. It wasn't over. Not yet. I stumbled out of the wreckage, my legs shaky, like they were no longer capable of holding me up. My hands were slick with sweat and dirt, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and charred wood. The warehouse, once a towering, oppressive structure, was now nothing but rubble. Blackened beams and twisted metal sprawled across the ground in disarray. The fire had done its work, swallowing everything whole. But even as I stood there, blinking against the harsh light of dawn, something in my gut told me it wasn't over. I looked back once more at the smoldering remains. The fire, still crackling in places, sent smoke spiraling into the early morning fog, making the whole area feel like some kind of forgotten nightmare. There was no sign of Ronald, no sign of the creature, just the rubble, the silence, and the smell of destruction. I half expected the earth to shake again, for something to rise from the ashes, but nothing came. I forced myself to take a deep breath, tasting the bitter remnants of ash and burnt wood in the air. The sirens grew louder in the distance, probably the authorities, responding to the reports of smoke and fire. They wouldn't understand what happened here. Hell, I barely understood it myself. How could I explain what I'd seen, what I'd barely survived? I took another step forward, trying to make it to the edge of the property, away from the ruins. The morning air was cold on my face, and the fog still clung to the ground like a heavy shroud. I should have felt relief. I should have felt something other than this gnawing unease that wouldn't leave my chest. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was wrong. That's when I heard it. A faint whisper, barely a murmur at first, drifting over the wind. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze. It was a sound I knew too well. My name. It came from the direction of the wreckage, low and soft, as though the wind itself was speaking it. I turned, half expecting to see someone standing there, Ronald, or maybe even the creature, crawling out from the ruins, ready to finish what it had started. But there was nothing, just the smoke, the fog, and the silence. I shook my head, tried to rid myself of the feeling that clung to me like a second skin. It was just my mind playing tricks on me, I told myself. The stress, the exhaustion. Maybe I had inhaled too much smoke, or maybe I was losing my grip on reality. That was it, right? There was no monster. There was no creature. It was all just some twisted nightmare, a product of too many long shifts in that damned warehouse. But then I heard again, louder this time, more distinct. Mike. It was unmistakable. A whisper, almost sweet, as if calling me from the depths of the fog. My blood ran cold. I didn't want to turn around, but I couldn't help myself. Slowly I did. The air seemed to grow heavier, pressing in on me, suffocating me. My eyes scanned the ruins, the twisted metal, the broken walls. Everything was still. Everything was silent. But I knew that something was watching me. I turned away, fast, and kept walking. Each step felt like a weight dragging me down, pulling me further into some place I didn't belong. The sirens were closer now, and I heard voices shouting. Someone was running toward me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stay in this place any longer. I had to get away. The fog wrapped around me like a blanket as I moved faster, the weight of dread still sinking deeper in my chest. My eyes darted back, expecting to see something emerging from the shadows, something that shouldn't be there. But there was nothing. Nothing but the fog, the dirt beneath my feet, and the distant sound of approaching sirens. I kept walking, trying to ignore the nagging feeling at the back of my mind, the feeling that something was still out there, something I couldn't see, but could always feel. A presence, like a shadow stretching long into the horizon, waiting for the moment when I'd let my guard down, waiting for the moment when it would be free again. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was the trauma, the exhaustion. But deep down, I couldn't shake the truth of it. Whatever had been inside that warehouse, whatever had been lurking beneath the floors and between the shadows, was still there. And it wasn't done with me. I glanced over my shoulder one last time, but all I saw was the fog, thick and still, clinging to the earth. For a moment, I thought I saw something moving in the distance, something dark, but when I blinked, it was gone. I kept walking. Maybe I would never understand what happened in that warehouse. Maybe I would never be able to explain it to anyone, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever it was, I couldn't outrun it. Not really. Mike. The whisper carried on the wind, and I couldn't tell if it was real or if it was just my mind unraveling. But as I walked away, I felt it, that presence, just beyond the fog, just out of reach. Watching, waiting, and in the pit of my stomach, I knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot.